Chalakaya Chakshurulmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah.
Shri Chaitanyam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Tadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru
Pada Kamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri
Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Deenabandha Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gauranga
Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhasute
Pranamami
Hari
Panchakalpatarubhyascha
Kripa Sindhu
Vaishnaveyo Vaishnavyo Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Krishna Krishna
Hare
Hare Rama Rama Hare
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Mataji, would you like to read the setting the scene from the book first?
Prabhuji, in Bhagavatam.
No, in the Bhagavad Gita.
In the Bhagavad
Gita. You want me to start Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita today?
No, we are setting the scene in the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, so you can read this.
I thought even that text had setting the scene. Okay, setting the scene. Although widely published and read by itself, Bhagavad Gita originally appears as an episode in the Mahabharat, the epic Sanskrit history of the ancient world. The Mahabharat tells of events leading up to the present age of Kali. It was at the beginning of this age, some 50 centuries ago, that Lord Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to his friend and devotee Arjuna. Their discourse, one of the greatest philosophical and religious dialogues known to man, took place just before the onset of the war, a great fratricidal conflict between the 100 sons of Dhritarashtra and on the opposing side, their cousins, the Pandavas, or sons of Pandu. Dhritarashtra and Pandu were brothers born in the Kuru dynasty, descending from King Bharata, a former ruler of the earth from whom the name Mahabharat derives. Because Dhritarashtra, the elder brother, was born blind, the throne that otherwise would have been his was passed down to the younger brother Pandu. When Pandu died at an early age, his 5 children, Yudhishthir, Bhima, Arjun, Nakula, and Sahadev, came under the care of Dhritarashtra, who in effect became, for the time being, the king. Thus, the sons of Dhritarashtra and those of Pandu grew up in the same royal household. Both were trained in the military arts by the expert Drona and counseled by the reverend grandfather of the clan, Bhishma. Yet the sons of Dhritarashtra, especially the eldest, Duryodhana, hated and envied the Pandavas, and the blind and weak-minded Dhritarashtra wanted his own sons, not those of Pandu, to inherit the kingdom. Thus, Duryodhan, with Dhritarashtra's consent, plotted to kill the young sons of Pandu, and it was only by careful protection of their uncle Vidura and their cousin Lord Krishna and the Pandavas escaped the many attempts against their lives. Now, Lord Krishna was not an ordinary man, but a supreme Godhead himself, who had descended to the earth and was playing the role of a prince in the contemporary dynasty. In this role, he was also the nephew of the Pandu's wife Kunti, or Pritha, the mother of the Pandavas. So both as a relative and as an eternal upholder of religion, Krishna favored the righteous sons of Pandu and protected them. Ultimately, however, the clever Duryodhana challenged the Pandavas to a gambling match. In the course of that fateful tournament, Duryodhana and his brothers took possession of Draupadi, the chaste and devoted wife of the Pandavas, and insultingly tried to strip her naked before the entire assembly of princes and kings. Krishna's divine intervention saved her, but the gambling, which was rigged, cheated the Pandavas of their kingdom and forced them into 13 years of exile. Upon returning from exile, the Pandavas rightfully requested their kingdom from Duryodhana, who bluntly refused to yield it. Duty-bound as princes to serve in public administration, the 5 Pandavas reduced their request to a mere 5 villages. But Duryodhana arrogantly replied that he wouldn't spare them enough land into which to drive a pin. Throughout all this, the Pandavas have been consistently tolerant and forbearing. But now, war seemed inevitable. Nonetheless, as the princes of the world divided, some siding with the sons of Dhritarashtra, others with Pandavas, Krishna himself took the role of messenger for the sons of Pandu and went to the court of Dhritarashtra to plead for peace. When his plea were refused, war was now certain. The Pandavas, men of highest moral stature, recognized Krishna to be the supreme personality of Godhead, whereas the impious sons of Dhritarashtra did not. Yet Krishna offered to enter the war according to the desire of the antagonist. As God, he would not personally fight, but whoever so desired might avail himself of Krishna's army. And the other side would have Krishna himself as an advisor and helper. Duryodhana, the political genius, snatched at Krishna's armed forces, while the Pandavas were equally eager to have Krishna himself. In this way, Krishna became the charioteer of Arjuna, taking it upon himself to drive the fabled bowman's chariot. This brings us to the point at which Bhagavad Gita begins, with the 2 armies arrayed, ready for combat, and Dhritarashtra anxiously inquiring of his secretary Sanjaya, what did they do? The scene is set, with only the need for a brief note regarding this translation and commentary. The general pattern translators have followed in rendering Bhagavad Gita into English has been to brush aside the person Krishna to make room for their own concepts and philosophies. The history of Mahabharata is taken as quaint mythology, and Krishna becomes a poetic device for presenting the ideas of some anonymous genius, or at best, he becomes a minor historical personage. But the person Krishna is both the goal and the substance of Bhagavad Gita, so far as the Gita speaks of itself. This translation, then, and the commentary that accompanies it propose to direct the reader to Krishna rather than away from him. In this, Bhagavad Gita, as it is unique. Also unique is that Bhagavad Gita thus becomes wholly consistent and comprehensible. Since Krishna is the speaker of Gita and his ultimate goal as well, this is necessary, the only translation that presents this great scripture in its true terms. The publishers. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So I'll take you a little backwards in this setting the scene. Srila Prabhupada is giving you the cream. Recording. How all these events went up to speaking about the Gita. Now, I don't know if you have received this chart I had sent today. Now, if you go to this chart, when you reach Srimad Bhagavatam in the 9th canto, comes the story of Yayati, whose name is mentioned here on the top. In the story of Yayati, we know that he was cursed to become an old man because we don't go to the whole story. Then he said, how can I become young? He says, if one of your sons agrees to change his body, none of them agreed except one, Puru, whose name is mentioned here. So in this way, Puru came Dushyant, Bharat, Bhimanyu, King Kuru, Hastina, Pratipa. Now, we start from Shantanu. If you see Shantanu, Shantanu is somewhere here in the middle, right in the middle of the page. Yeah. Now, Shantanu was the ruler of Hastinapur and a very good ruler. For years, he ruled. And being a very dynamic Kshatriya, he would go for hunting also. So one day when he went to hunting, we find that he came across a very beautiful maiden dressed in white and extremely beautiful. And he fell for her, and even she liked him. Not knowing, but that lady was personified Queen Ganga. So that was Queen Ganga, if you see on the right-hand side. And he married Ganga on a condition that Ganga told Shantanu, that after marriage, do not question me on my actions. The day you question me, I will leave your company and go away. So in the due course, some children were born. And each time a child was born, Ganga would drown the child in the river Ganga or the river Ganges, second, third, and so on. And seeing all this, Shantanu would not speak due to the condition. But on the 8th child, he was not happy. So he said, what kind of a woman are you? You have no heart. You are a cruel woman. Why are you drowning all the children? Not knowing the reason behind it, that why she was drowning. Anyway, River Ganga told Shantanu that this is your child and I'll not stay with you anymore. And she went away. And if you go now to the left-hand side, we find that Shantanu, once again, when he went for Devrat, we'll come to Devrat later on. We go on this side now, where it's written Queen Satyavati. Now, one day when he was hunting, before we go to this incident, we should know who is Satyavati. Satyavati was a very beautiful lady. Actually, she was a Kshatriya, adopted by a fisherman. And one day in the evening, there was a rishi or a sage named Parasha. He wanted to cross River Ganga. So he came to the fisherman and says, if you can help me cross the river. And Ganga in those days was very huge and massive. And he says, I'm very old, I can't. So Satyavati was standing there. He says, if you don't mind, Father, I can take him. And when he was seated on the boat, and she was like rowing the boat, by the time it reached almost halfway, King Parasha saw the beauty of Satyavati. And he decided that I impregnate her womb with a child who is an incarnation of Krishna. And he did so. And at that time, Satyavati also refused. He says, so many people are looking, so many celestial people are looking at me. So at that time, he created clouds or a kind of a fog. And this way, a child, Satyavati became pregnant. And she realized that now she's pregnant. She told the sage, what have you done this? He said, I had no other option. This child which you are carrying is not an ordinary child. He knows the entire Vedas. And upon taking birth, you still remain a virgin, but he will not live with you. Because upon taking birth, he will walk away. So by the time the boat reached the other way, at the other side, by the mercy of Parashar, a small kuti means a small cottage was made. And he said, after delivering your child, a king will come to marry you, the king of Hastinapur. And Satyavati said, nobody will marry me because my body produces the odor of fish because I lived in the house of a fisherman. It says, from today onwards, your body will produce a fragrance of musk. Musk is a perfume naturally found in some deers, in the navel of the deer, very strong perfume. And this smell will be so strong that it can attract anyone from up to the 8-kilometer radius. So in the due course, she gave birth to a son. And the son started walking away. And mother said, son, come back. And he says, I don't have time. I have a lot of work to do. So that son, he said, but when I'm in need of you, what do I do? He said, just call my name. He said, what's your name? He said, my name is Vyash. Now that is Vyashdev. So because at that time, he was born on an island. Now, as a few months went by, again we go back to Shantanu. When he was hunting, he was attracted to this fragrance, and he went into the cottage and found a very beautiful maiden. And it was like love at first sight, and they fell in love. And they would meet again and again. And one day he asked Satyavati that I want to marry you. He says, you have to ask the permission of my father. So he went to the father and asked the father that I want to marry your daughter. He said, I can't marry you can't marry my daughter. He said, why? He said, I promise the father of this girl that whoever marries this Satyavati, her son will become the king. Now you already have a young son. That last son I forgot to tell you, the son of Ganga, his son was called Devrat. And Devrat at that time was already almost 15, 16 years old when this incident happened. And he was a valiant son. And he was declared as the regent. It means everybody knew he'll become the next king. Just like in Ramayana, we had Ramachandra chosen by King Dashrath. In the similar way, here, Shantanu is chosen Devrat. Now when Satyavati's father, or so-called the father, said that you can't marry my daughter. So the king, for this reason that you already have a son who's going to be the king, so I can't do it. Now, the king, Shantanu, was deeply in love with Satyavati. became very morose and puzzled. And he was in a dilemma, what to do. So when he came to the palace, he was never happy. And as the time went by, Devrat noticed his father, that he is not happy. So he tried to ask the father, what is the cause of unhappiness? But he won't say. She went to the nearest one very confidential minister and asked him, what is the problem? She explained that actually he wants to marry Satyavati, the daughter of fisherman. But this is the condition. So what did Devrat do? He himself went to the fisherman and told the fisherman that I have come to collect my mother, Satyavati. He said, who are you? He said, I'm Devrat. He says, doesn't your father know that my daughter will not be given to him unless he fulfills the promise that her son will become the next king of Hastinapur? He said, yes, that is why I've come here. I am taking the first oath that I'll never sit on the throne of Hastinapur. That was the first oath. And then the fisherman had still more doubts. He said, what about you becoming a father? And when you get a son, he wants to sit on the throne. What will happen? And Bhishma took the second oath, Devrat took the second oath, that I'll remain a celibate for the rest of my life. So when these two oaths were taken, these oaths were so powerful that the earth started shaking and the flowers came from the heavens. And from Devrat he became Bhishma. So if you see in the chart, Devrat is called Bhishma. Now, he came back with Satyavati, back to, to the palace, and his father was extremely happy. At the same time, extremely sad. He said, why did you take a promise like this? You deprived all the happiness of your life. You are going to live a life of sacrifice. And Bhishma said, yes, I'll always guard the throne of Hastinapur, but I'll not sit on the throne, first thing. And I'll always remain a brahmachari, a celibate. And the father blessed him that I'm giving you a benediction that you'll choose a time to die and nobody can kill you. That was a very, very great benediction. So anyway, we go a little further. As Satyavati married Shantanu, later on, they had two sons, Chitrangada, Vichitra, Virya. And they were trained by Bhishma. As they became old enough, they became nice princes. And when they became like a marriageable age, they went, Queen Satyavati told Bhishma that it's high time they should get married. Of course, here on the chart, they are not showing, but actually, Bhishma went to look for the wives the queens the wives for Chitrangada and Vichitra Virya. At that time, there was a swayamvar, a contest at Kashi. King of Kashi had three daughters, Amba, Ambalika, Ambarisha. And Bhishma is very powerful. He won the contest. And he took the three girls and he was coming to Hastinapur. And on the way, the eldest daughter, Amba, said that actually, I can't marry because I'm already in love with Shalya. She said that anyway, I need two girls. I don't want a third one. So you can go down. So he left her off the chariot and he proceeded to Hastinapur. And as he came to Hastinapur, Chitrangada and Vichitra were married to Ambalika and Ambarisha. In this way, years went by. What happened to Amba, the first daughter, is when Bhishma left her, she went to the king, Shalya, and requested that now let's get married. And the king flatly refused. I can't marry you because you are actually won by Bhishma. Now again, she was in a problem. Now she went to Parshuram. Parshuram is very, very powerful. And Parshuram is said to have also taught warfare to so many people. So when she went to Parshuram, Parshuram called Bhishma and told Bhishma that you have to marry her because you had won her in the contest, and he refused. And he said, I have two odds, and one of the odds is that I'll remain celibate. He says, then if you don't marry her, you have to fight with me. And Bhishma actually fought with Parshuram and defeated him. And also Parshuram took an oath, from now onwards, I'll never teach warfare to any Kshatriya. That's why we find that later on Karna disguises as a Brahmin to learn the warfare from Parshuram. Anyway, on this side, as the marriage were taken place, and as they were as the years went by, Chitrangada was killed in a battle. Now only one son was left, Vichitra Viryam. And both the queens, one wife already became, the wife of Chitrangada became a widow. Vichitra Virya's wife also became a widow. How? Because Vichitra Virya later on developed some disease. And according to Mahabharat, it was something like cholera, that he died in that. That means both the wives became widows. Now this again brought a problem to Queen Satyavati. So Queen Satyavati again called her first son. Everybody knows the name of the son, yeah? What is the name of the son? Anybody recalls?
Yes.
Yes, it's Vyas. So when upon simply uttering the name Vyas appeared, yes, mother, how can I help you? He said, look at your brother's daughters, brother's wives. None of them have children. Who will rule or who will run or who will rule over the throne of Hastinapur? Because before even summoning Vyasa, she requested Bhishma that I am freeing you from the oath, become the king. He said, no, I can't break my promises. So when Vyasa learned this, he said, okay, I can do one thing. I can impregnate these two ladies. And when they get children, they will become the rulers, or any one of them become the rulers. We said, okay. So Vyasa told that early in the morning tomorrow, which is the next day, both the girls, or both the as good as queens, should come in front of me the way they were born. Because when we are born, we don't wear any clothes. We are born naked. And they should pass in front of me, and I'll impregnate them. So the first one passed. And when the first one passed, she was very shy. And because of shyness, she closed the eyes. And Bhishma said, what did you do? Because you closed your eyes, your son will be born blind. And that was the Drashtra. If you see in the paragraph, if you see the chart, the first son is the son of Ambika. Ambika's son became the Drashtra. And when Ambalika passed, she said, how can I pass in front of a great Brahmana? So she rubbed ash over her body and she passed. And Vyasdev said, now what did you do? Why did you have to put ash on you? She said, out of shyness. She said, now your son will be very pale you look like a European. Because Europeans, people who are white there, they look very pale actually. And that son became Pandu. So Queen Satyavati had a maid who was very devoted to Lord Krishna. She said, even I want a son. He said, okay, you also go. Now when she passed, she was chanting the holy names. And Vyasdev was extremely pleased. He says, your son will be the best of all. And that was Vidura, the son of the maid. Because she was chanting, he became a very wise person. And so of the three, the wisest person was Vidura. The Drashtra became blind. Pandu became a valiant warrior and he won many, many kingdoms. And later on, they were married. Now, before marriage, Queen Kunti had served Durvasha. Durvasha is a sage who becomes very angry, and at the same time, he can become also very pleased. So he is considered as an incarnation, a partial incarnation of Lord Shiva. So one day, he was visiting Kunti, and Kunti was very young, maybe around 14 years old or 12 years old. But she served the sage so nicely that he was so pleased. He says, tomorrow I'll give you a benediction, whatever benediction you want. So Kunti said, yes. Now, at the same day, means on the eve of the benediction, Gandhari was visiting. And Kunti, I mean, ladies have a nature, they like to speak. And she just spoke out that tomorrow morning I'm going to be benedicted. And Gandhari asked that, who is going to benedict you? He said, Durvasha. What are you going to ask for? He said, I'm going to ask for a nice sons. She said, okay. Now Gandhari is very clever. She was almost the same age. Before Kunti reaching there, she went to Durvasha. Now in those days, the women would cover their head with a veil, gungat. And she appeared in front of what we call Durvasha. And Durvasha blessed her. My daughter, what do you want? She said, I want 100 sons. So Vyasdev said, so be it. So she got a benediction of getting 100 sons. After a few minutes, Kunti appeared. So Durvasha said, why have you come the second time? He said, I have not come. I have come the first time. He said, then who was the first one? She said, I don't know. Anyway, so Durvasha is not an ordinary person, very, very powerful. He went into his samadhi and he realized that the other lady was not Kunti, but it was Gandhari. She asked Kunti, now what do you want? He said, what benediction did you give to her? He said, she asked for 100 sons, and so I gave her 100 sons. He said, so also you give me 100 sons? He said, no. I'll only give you 5 mantras. You can invoke any 5 devatas. 5 devatas means Surya, Dharma, Vayu, Ashwini Kavas, and Indra. He said, but why 5? So you should hear what the Rasha said. These 5 sons of yours will destroy those 100 sons. This is the beginning of Mahabharat, the seed. So you find that later on, Kunti got married to Pandu and Gandhari got married to Dhritarashtra. And both of them probably lived very close. And as years went by, Pandu won many, many kingdoms. And each time he would win a kingdom, he would bring the crowns of those kings who were defeated to Bhishma. And in this way, he became the emperor of the entire planet. This is King Pandu. So one day, Bhishma told Pandu, it's high time you should take some holiday, relax yourself. So why don't you go to the ashram of the Brahmanas outside the city, where you can reside for few months so that you can regain your lost energy and come back. Now, when they were dwelling in the ashram, in the evening, King Pandu told Kunti that I want to tell you some secret, that I am the most unfortunate king. He said, why? He said, I can never become a father because I have a curse hanging on me. One day, I shot a deer, just like in Ramayana, Darshan had shot Shravan, who had gone to take water. In the similar way, he had shot a deer, but it was not a deer, it was a deer and a female deer. Actually, they were Brahmins disguised as deers, and both were killed together. And while dying, they revealed the original form. And it was a sage called Kindam Rishi. And they cursed King Pandu that the day you think of even conceiving the child, you will die. So he knew he had a curse on him. But Queen Kunti consoled him. He said, don't worry. I know how to bring children. I can invoke devtas like so many. And I forgot to tell you that before marriage, she had already done an experiment. She had called for Surya. Surya is the sun god. And when Surya appeared, came with a benediction, yes, I'll give you a son. And Kunti refused. So, no, I don't want. I was just trying. He says, you already invoked, you are going to get a son. He said, but then I'll lose my virginity. He said, no, your child will not be born in a usual way. He will be born from the ear. Because the child was born from the ear of Kunti. Ear is called in Sanskrit Karna. That child was called Karna. So she took the child, put it into a basket, had it floated down the river, Ganga. And sent also a maid that go and see who takes the child. And that child was adopted by a carpenter. And that's how, Karna grew up. Now on this side, after marriage, when she went to give, call for benediction from different devtas. First she invoked Dharmaraj. And Dharma benedicted him with a son. He said, your son will be the most wisest son. And he will know the scriptures in and out. And he'll be very, very wise. And he'll be, and in the war, he'll remain very steady. And that is why he was called Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira. And this is how the first son of Haribol. This is how Yudhishthira, the first son, actually the first son is Karna, but first son to Kunti is Dharmaraj, he is called Yudhishthira. Second son was from the Devta or the demigod known Vayu. And Vayu gave a son. And the son was so big and huge and very strong. And upon taking birth, he smiled at Kunti. When Kunti saw the child, she was shocked, amazed, because he had all the 32 teeth in the mouth. And she could hardly carry him. Then upon getting the child, it fell down on a rock, and the rock broke into pieces. That was Bhima. And Vayu told him, this son will be very wise and very strong. So that is Bhima. Then she invoked Indra. Indra gave a valiant son called Arjuna. He said, your son will become Krishna Saka, or the friend of Krishna. And you'll become one of the most famous heroes of the entire planet, on the entire planet, and that is Arjuna. The word also means a very straightforward person, and he was a very straightforward person. Now, when these three sons came to Kunti, Pandu also had another wife known as Madhuri. This Madhuri also told Kunti, requested, you have one mantra left, give me that mantra, so that even I can become a mother. So she gave that mantra to Madhuri, and she invoked Ashwini Kumars, which are twins, which are considered to be the nostrils of the universal form. So two sons were born twins, Sadev and Nakul. So in this way, the five Pandavas are born. Kunti gave birth to Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna. Madhuri gave birth to Nakul and Sadev. And when the sons were born to Pandu, he was so happy and he rejoiced. And he started giving so many cows in donation to the Brahmanas and invited all the Brahmanas for prasada. But one day, he lustily looked at Madhuri and the curse worked. The curse had to happen that he died. And Madhuri became a sati and told Kunti that, please take care of my sons. And Kunti promised, I'll take care of your sons more than my own sons. She brought all the five sons to Hastinapur, and they were maintained by Dhritarashtra and very much cared by Bhishma. In this way, the Pandavas grew older. And on the other side, what happened to Gandhari? When she heard that the queen, Kunti, had already given birth to five sons, she became very angry. And out of envy, she took a fist, her own fist, and hit it on the belly. And a piece of meat came out, a big piece of meat. And she wanted to throw away. But one Brahmin said, don't throw it away. He took that meat, made into 100 pieces, rather 101 pieces, and put them in the pots. In the due course, each one bore a son and one daughter. The first son was born with Duryodhana. And when Duryodhana took birth, there were bad omens. The sky became blackish. There was a raging wind. The wolves were crying. And Vidura heard it. And Vidura told Dhritarashtra to kill this son. He'll destroy your entire family. He refused. He says, it's my son. How can I do this? This is the sign. Actually, Duryodhana is a partial incarnation of Kali Yuga. Anyway, then the second son was born, Dusarshan. In this way, other 98 sons were born. This is how the Kauravas were born. So they grew older together, and later on they had a common spiritual master, Dronacharya. We won't go into the entire story, there'll be a very short time. Anyway, as they grew on and on, we find that Duryodhana, as Shri Prabhupada mentioned in the setting of the scene, he was very, very envious and jealous of the Pandavas. And he did everything to destroy them. As we read the Mahabharat, we find that one day he invited Bhima because he was very much afraid of Bhima. Bhima was very, very strong. So he fed Bhima with sweets, with poison inside, and threw him in Yamuna. But as he sank in Yamuna, there were snakes there who removed the poison, took him to the kingdom of Nagaloka. And they asked him, whose son are you? He said, I'm the son of Pandu or Kunti. And he was benedicted that from that day onwards, no poison can kill you. And he came on the surface and he lived alive. And he came to see the mother Kunti. And Kunti said, keep quiet and don't speak anything. In this way, first was they tried to poison them. Second, after later on, as they married, they tried to burn the Pandavas along with Kunti. This was all the plan of Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. The actual plan is Duryodhana, but Dhritarashtra knew this well. At that time, they also escaped by the tunnel made by Vidura. They tried to attack them with deadly weapons when they were in the forest. They took their property, their kingdom by force. They tried to kidnap Draupadi when they were in the exile. This was done by the son-in-law of Dhritarashtra. And they plundered the riches of the Pandavas. So 6 kind of aggressions they did, which you read in the first chapter, in the Bhagavad Gita. This kind of aggression should have been killed. But the Pandavas tolerated it. And after 13 years of exile, when they returned, when they asked for the kingdom, they refused. No, you can't get your kingdom. And so they said, if you can't give us back our kingdom, give us 5 villages. And they refused. Now, war was inevitable. This is how Mahabharat war was planned. Actually, the Kauravas should have been killed long, long ago. But Krishna had actually protected the Pandavas each time, which Queen Kunti knew it very well, and the Pandavas knew very well. So even when they went through all the difficulties, they remained tolerant because they were pure devotees. And then the Mahabharat war took place, and we all know that the Pandavas had a very small army. The ratio was 7 to 11. The Kauravas a very big army with many heroes on the side of Duryodhana. Powerful heroes like Bhishma, Drona, Kripacharya, Ashwatthama, Karna, and so on. Whereas on the other side of the Pandavas is only Bhima and Arjuna. Yet by the mercy of Krishna, they won the war. And before the war began, already the war had begun, Arjuna became desperate and he didn't want to fight. He came on a bodily platform. His mind was not working. That is why Bhagavad Gita was spoken. And that is called Bhagavad Gita. Hare Krishna. Time is already up. I try to say it in the shortest possible way, yeah?
Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhuji, thank you very much for setting the scene. And now we will know all these personalities. And when we read the Bhagavatam, I think they'll be mentioned. And so we won't be so
ignorant. Same will be mentioned in Bhagavatam also.
So we won't be so ignorant about them. I'll open up for any questions and comments. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Madan Gopal Das Prabhuji. Prabhuji, Hare Krishna. Please accept our humble obeisances from everybody in this group, Prabhuji. Thank you for joining in today.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, we can't hear you. Madan Gopal, Prabhuji, we can't hear you.
Unmute yourself.
If you are unmuted, increase your volume, Prabhuji, because we can't hear you. We can't hear you still. Prabhuji, we can't hear you. We can't hear you, Prabhuji. Okay, fine. Any questions or comments? Hare Krishna. I think we have a thank you, Rukma Prabhu, from Madan Gopal.
Thank you very much, Maha. Hare Krishna, Madan Gopal Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Accept my downwards, Hare Krishna.
Okay, are there any other questions or answers? Prabhuji is saying something is wrong with his audio, it seems. Very nice summary of Mahabharata. In such a short time, Prabhuji, you have mentioned so many stories. To be honest, I didn't know some of them. Some of them I knew. Prabhuji, I didn't understand when you said Duryodhan was a reincarnation of who? I didn't
understand. Kali Yuga. It's a partial expansion of Kali Yuga.
That's why in Kali Yuga, people are behaving like Duryodhan.
Yes.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Panchali?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Just wanted to know a bit more about the Ashwin Kumars. So who were they?
Ashwini Kumars are the Devdas of the universal form, just like we have the nose. We have two nostrils. The universal form also is the two nostrils. And they are twins. They are known as Ashwini Kumars.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Sandhya,
yeah.
Sandhya, kindly unmute.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Hare Krishna, all devotees. Prabhuji, I just want to know, I thought caste system, etc. started in Kali Yuga, and there was no caste system prior to that. But sorry, Prabhu.
Your question is not clear. What was not there?
Prabhuji, the caste system, the caste, you know, I thought caste system started only after. Prior to that, people did things that they were capable of doing. However, I find this a bit contradictory, because when Karn was a very good, warrior, even though he learned the art of war, again, there comes the caste system. He was told that you will not be taught because you are a Sutputra, right?
Yeah.
And even later on, till the very, very end, everyone, and even when there were competitions, he was never allowed to take part in them. And that's how Duryodhan took advantage when he saw his, skills. So that was caste system, wasn't it? Even though he was one of the best, and hence, because based on his ability, he should have been very high up. But I think there was caste system, wasn't it? Prabhu?
Caste system came in the Treta Yuga, if you don't know. In
What is that?
Satyuga, in Satyuga was only one community, Hamsa. Hamsa communities means everybody was better than even Brahmanas. There was no need of different caste, means class system. Actually, the actual word is class, which later became to caste. Classes came in Treta Yuga because in Satyuga, the religion mark, Dharma stood at 100%. And when the Treta Yuga came, the 25% went off. It means 75%. Three-quarter of Dharma was existence. So caste system or the class system or the Varnashram system came in Treta Yuga. And it continued very well, even in Dwapar Yuga. And it even continued in Kali Yuga, but it then got spoiled because the Brahmanas said that the sons of Brahmanas are the Brahmanas. If you go to the Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, I think verse number 11, it says, Chatur Varnam Maya Shishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha. This system was followed by me. This says Guna and Karma, doesn't say Janma. But the Brahmanas put the word Janma inside. And they said only those born of a Brahmin are called Brahmanas. And this way the whole Varnashram system got spoiled, almost from the beginning of Kali Yuga. And it still, partial Varnashram system remained even up to 200 years ago, still it was there. Even when the Muslims were ruling, caste system was quite strong and Dharma was very strong. Anyway, regarding Karna, we find that nobody knew who is Karna properly. Only Kunti knew it and Krishna knew it. Yeah. And Krishna deliberately, he did not want Draupadi to marry Karna during the Swayamvar or the contest of Draupadi. That's why she waited. And by heart, she only wanted to marry Arjuna. That was the plan. Anyway, Karna's character is a very sad character. But Karna, on the other side, was a very, very charitable man. There's no one charitable like Karna. Very special person. Mm-hmm. So we can't say caste system came recently. No, it was there. And the caste system is still there. Naturally, it is still there. If you go to our physio and psychological nature, you realize that either you are a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Sudra. So according to your nature, if you work and serve Krishna, that is a perfection of life. Okay, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you. Sorry, I got the facts wrong. Thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji,
right. If you read Prabhupada, if you hear Prabhupada, Prabhupada explains very nicely. And also in the Bhagavatam, it will be mentioned in one of the purports, how there was only one class of people in Satyuga, and then the Varnashram system was introduced. There was a necessity. In Kali Yuga, Varnashram system is there, but it is a degraded, completely degraded. That's why so much corruption is there. Brahmins are not meant to be corrupt. When the Brahmins become corrupt, the Kshatriyas will become corrupt, then the rest of the community will become corrupt. Is it okay, Mother?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you. Prabhuji, if there is time.
Gives another example.
Yeah.
Sorry. One point I forgot to mention, just like our head is the most important. The head is considered to be like a Brahmin. If there's a problem in the head, the rest of the body will suffer. That's why Brahmins are very important. Among humans, Brahmins are very important. Among animals, cows are very important. That's why we speak this prayer. Namo Brahmana Devaya Govardhanaya Hitaya Cha Jagaditaya Krishnaya Govindaya Nama. So if Brahmins are worshipped, cows are worshipped, there'll be peace on the earth. When this worship stops, there'll be all chaos. That's why Prabhupada made this society ISKCON, that new Brahmins will come to existence. They'll be trained into Brahmins so that the peace can prevail on the earth.
Prabhuji, do you think in future the caste, Brahmins and Sudra and all, it will go away because Nowadays, the people don't see
Will
the.
not go away, but if everything goes well, it will come again, because without Varna and Ashram, there can't be a peaceful society. There is a necessity. Sri Prabhupada said, not just Prabhupada, even Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said, the Varnashram will come again if everything goes well, if ISKCON works very well. Then it will be called Devi Varnashram. It means everybody will worship only Krishna. But there will be Brahmanas who will worship Krishna, Kshatriyas according to Krishna, Vaishyas according to Krishna, Sudras according to Krishna. The whole community is centered around Krishna. That's why it will be called Devi Varnashram. Now this will happen in the due course.
Prabhuji, can I ask a question, please? If there are no wars, will there be Kshatriyas there?
Well, but there'll be no time that there will be no wars. It's not that the wars will be like a Ramayana war, like Ravan and the one of Mahabharat. Even in every family, there's a war. So how can we say there will be no wars?
Yeah.
Our nature is like that. We are envious. There's always the dirt in our mind. There's envy. As far as envy is there, there will be always problems, fights, and later on it will become into a war.
Prabhuji, but envy must have come from somewhere. Krishna must have made envy, isn't it?
No, envy means dirt. Dirt in your mind. Of course, origin of everything is Krishna, but we can't blame Krishna. Like 6 enemies in the heart. First one is Kama. Kama, Krodha, Moha, Lobha, Mada, Matsarya. Matsarya means envy. Envy is the thickness of all. If you can remove envy, then you become a nice person. But we cannot win even Kama. What to talk of Matsarya? You hardly find a man who has won over Kama. Kama means lusty desires. Very difficult. I can give you a practical example. If you have a water tank on your house, you find that the water, if you look from the top, water looks very clear. If you touch the water at the bottom of the tank, it is always dirty.
Yeah.
So at the bottom of our heart, there is dirt, which is called envy. It's called Matsarya in Sanskrit. Hirsha in Hindi.
Prabhuji, I think envy is there even in animals. Is that right?
In
That's my
every living
observation.
entity, yes. But the human beings are the worst of all. Chanakya Pandit says, a snake which carries a diamond at the top, money, does not mean the snake is not dangerous. It will still bite. But more dangerous than a snake is an envious human being. Because snakes can be controlled by a mantra. Human beings cannot be controlled by the mantra or by a prayer. The envy will come out. And we come across such people, when they are even speaking, they hiss, that the very tone they use is so negative that we don't like standing in front of them or near them. We can see such people. Many, not one, many. But when we become devotees, those things go away. That's why we should always take the shout of the holy name, chant Hare Krishna to purify ourselves.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, we envied Krishna, and that's the reason we are here. So
Yes.
envy was in us from a long time ago.
Yes, since time immemorial. we became rebellious.
Prabhuji, so can Krishna not remove envy?
Of course, if you take shelter, at once you'll remove.
Oh, yes.
Like if you stand in the sun, our impurities go away.
Yes.
Krishna is like the Surya. Krishna Surya Sama Maya Andakar. Jaha Krishna Taha Nahi Maya Adhikar. Where there is Krishna, there cannot be any darkness. So we have to bring Krishna in our heart, then the envy will go.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, we have exhausted our time today. Path Prabhuji, are you still on the road, or is it possible for you to conclude the session? Hare Krishna. Okay, I think Prabhuji is on the road. Prahlad Prabhu, are you able to close the session? Hare Krishna, Prahlad Prabhu. Okay, I can close the session then. Thank you, Prabhuji, for telling us about setting the scene. We should have done this in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, but we didn't do it. So, but at least now we know the various personalities, and it is very important since we are embarking on the Bhagavatam from tomorrow. Prabhuji, thank you very much for your time and all the wonderful stories. Let us all unmute and chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra once in glorification of Rukma Das Prabhuji. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Mancha
Ancha kalpatarubhasya kripa sindhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Shri
I had
Rukma
Shri
Das
Rukma
Prabhuji
Prabhu ki jai.
Jai.
I had one suggestion. If you have a problem with the Bhagavatam, you can always contact Sri Gauranga because he has done Bhakti Vaibhav. Sri Gauranga is very expert at Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah.
We need one day with him. If he can
Yeah.
commit one day.
I'll talk to him tomorrow and ask him if he can give one day to you. Yeah.
Okay, Prabhuji. Yes, thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.